Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahu Bijam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamostu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now it is over to Saptaparni. Sapta, please start.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, your screen visible.
Okay, okay. So I'm starting. So I we have to cover 4 topics in 2 days. So I'm taking a class today and then day after tomorrow. So today we'll be taking scaling techniques and questionnaire versus inventory. And in the next class, I'll be doing test development and test construction. And then we'll be done with the syllabus for level 2. And then we'll do revision and uh, we'll discuss the assignment submission. I've not been told what's going to be the assignment, but I'll find out and we'll discuss it in the next class. And in today's class, we'll also be discussing some of the questions from the examination point of view, from your Viva point of view, that I'll discuss later on. So right now, I'll just start with the this presentation. The slide is not changed. Yeah. So we are talking about measurement and scaling techniques. So in order to perform statistical analysis of data, it is important to understand measurement variables and what should be measured using those variables. So I'll simply start by what is measurement. So measurement is the process of observing and recording the observations that are collected as part of a research effort. It is the process by which we assign certain values or numbers to quantities. It is the process of observation and recording the observation that are collected as part of that research. So that is basically measurement, which is a process of observation and recording those observations. And what we measure are the variables. So variables is a quantity or an entity that can be measured. So for instance, if we consider a sample of employed and working individuals, then the variables for the set of the population can be like the industry, their location, their gender, age, skill, job type, working hours, etc. These are the variables because these are the quantities that can be measured, and the values of the variables will differ from employee to employee or from people to people, and that is how we collect data. So in levels of measurement, I'll explain the four major levels of measurement. There are four basic scaling techniques, which are the nominal scale, the ordinal scale, the interval, and the ratio scale. And then we move on to the reliability of measurement, including consideration of the true, something that is known as true score, and a variety of other reliability estimators. Am I clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
See, actually, I am not able to see the Zoom screen on my desktop. So, like, if you guys have any question, you have to like unmute your mics and talk, because I'm not able to see any hand raise option or anything. I can only see my PPT in my screen. So, if you have any questions, just stop me, unmute yourself, and ask. Okay, now moving forward.
It is
So,
visible.
yes, sir. Yes,
Visible.
yes, sir. So now there are various levels of measurements in statistics. So data that is measured using the levels of measurement can be broadly classified into qualitative or quantitative data. That I remember we discussed in the last class, where I was talking about collection of secondary data. And based on the level of measurement of a variable, the statistical test type can be used, that can be used is decided. So the mathematical nature of a variable, or in other words, how a variable is measured, is considered as the level of measurement. So we also have survey research, we have scaling. So survey research includes the design and implementation of interviews and questionnaires, the data that is collected through survey. So the best example is the census, where the Indian government conducts this huge survey across the country, and a huge bulk of data is generated, and that is a form of survey research. Then we have scaling, that involves consideration of major methods of development and implementing a scale. So based on our data or based on our topic, a scale is either designed, or a pre-designed scale is used for measurement. Then qualitative research is a type of research that generates non-numerical data. So in the last class, I discussed the basic difference between quantitative and qualitative data. So in qualitative data, we generally talk about feelings or emotions, or things that cannot be quantified. So that makes it so. In qualitative research, we cannot have these scaling techniques, the nominal, ordinal, or ratio scale that we are going to talk about. So qualitative research, we measure non-quantifiable emotions or feelings, or non-quantifiable data. Yeah, so these are the four primary scales: the nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio scales. As researchers, we have identified these scaling techniques, and these techniques are used by businesses, organizations, researchers, experts, etc. And these techniques can be classified as primary scaling techniques and other scaling techniques. So these are the four primary scaling techniques, and I'll tell you, like, I'll give like a brief overview. So in nominal scale, uh, they involve basically variables that can be named. Now I'll explain that later on in the slides, but just an introduction, that nominal scales are the scales that involves named variables. In ordinal, we have name plus ordered variables. So they can be named plus they can be arranged in an order. In interval scale, we have named, ordered, plus proportionate variables, proportionate intervals between variables. Okay, so here how they are like different from each other. So I have mentioned it in this slide as well. And in ratio scale, which is like a very comprehensive scale, it involves naming named variables plus ordered plus proportionate intervals between the variables, and they can accommodate absolute zero. So as you see, in nominal variable, there can be no variable which is like zero, because it doesn't involve any categorization, or it doesn't involve any hierarchy. It's just a named variable. Okay, So, for example, my name is Saptaparni, and your name is Ashmita and Payal, and then Sir. So it's we cannot arrange our names in a hierarchy, or we cannot arrange our names in a interval. So that is what nominal scale is basically. I'm going to discuss that further. So here you can see how as we so like from nominal to ratio scale, how it comprises of different ways that we can categorize these variables. So starting with the nominal scale, which is also called the categorical variable scale. It is a scale used for labeling of variables and into distinct classification, and it doesn't involve any quantity value or order value. So this is one of the easiest scale out of the four variables that we are discussing. So this scale is used for the purpose of classification. So one example of this is gender. So in gender, we have male, female, we might have a third gender like that. Okay, now we cannot arrange them into hierarchy, or we cannot put them into numbers. They are just names. Then we have like, what is your political preferences? It can be you can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican. So it's just, these are just names. Then blood groups. So we have A, we have AB, we have B blood group, we have O, and then we have A positive, A negative. So these are just different blood groups that we can classify under nominal scale. So here are some examples of nominal data. So nominal scales are adopted for non-quantitative that do not contain any numerical implication. So for labeling of those variables which are unique and different from one another. So there are different types of nominal scale. So we have a dichotomous. So a nominal scale that has only two labels is called dichotomous. So for example, yes or no. So in questions which involves which has answer like yes or no is a dichotomous nominal data. Then we have nominal with order. So the labels on a nominal scale arranged in an ascending order or a descending order can be nominal with data. Nominal with order. So order is termed as nominal with order. For example, excellent, good, average, poor. So this is nominal with order. And then we have nominal without order. So such as nominal scale that doesn't have any sequence. So for example, black, white, red, yellow, these are just names of colors. And then we have smartphones like iPhone, Samsung, Nokia. So these cannot be put into a hierarchy. So these would come under nominal without order. Okay, is the nominal scale clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay then. Now moving on to the second scale, which is the ordinal scale. So the ordinal scale functions on the concept of relative position of the object or label based on the individual's choice or preferences. For example, at Amazon, so we all know the shopping site Amazon. Every product has a customer review section where the buyer rates the listed products according to their buying experiences. So we have the product feature, the quality, the usage, etc. So the rating are like 5-star, which means excellent, then 4-star, which means good, 3-star average, 1-star poor, and 2-star poor, and 1-star, which is like the worst rating. So this is how ordinal scale works. So ordinal scale is defined as a variable measurement scale that is used to simply depict the order of variables. Okay, the name in itself is quite self-explanatory here. That we put things into order, we put things into a hierarchy. It is used for variable which can be categorized as well as ranked. Okay, so in nominal scale, we saw that it can only be categorized, but it cannot be ranked. You cannot rank blood groups as A is the best blood group and O is the worst blood group. It doesn't work like that. But in ordinal scale, you can name the categories. They can be ranked in an order. That is when one choice is superior than the other. So these can be ranked on the basis of their levels. So it is used to measure non-numeric or qualitative concepts like happiness, satisfaction, level of pain, etc. So if I ask you, like as a customer, how satisfied are you with a particular product, you'll give me a rating, or you'll give me that something like I'm very satisfied, oh I'm not satisfied at all. So that comes under ordinal data. So if I give you other examples of ordinal data, so status at workplace. For example, I may ask you how satisfied are you with today's class, and you might give me a number from 1 to 10, or you can tell me that ma'am, today I'm not at all satisfied with the class, I did not understand anything, or today's class was exceptionally good, I could understand and relate with the topic. So it's your satisfaction with a certain product, with a certain service that is provided to you, or a product quality. Like, you might buy something from the supermarket, and then you might have a certain opinion about it. You might compare. So we always compare, like we buy one bar of chocolate and we might compare it to another chocolate in the market. So this comparison can be ranked in the ordinal scale, and these scales are generally used in market type of research to gather and evaluate relative feedback about product satisfaction, the changing perceptions with products, and how they can be upgraded, etc. Now we come to our third scale, which is the interval scale. So an interval scale is also called a cardinal scale, which is a numerical labeling with the same difference among the consecutive measurement units. So with the help of this scaling technique, the researcher can obtain a better comparison between the objects. So for example, a survey conducted by an automobile company to know the number of vehicles owned by people living in a particular area. So that can be measured using the interval scale. So it adopted the interval scaling technique for the purpose, provided the units can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. In the scale mentioned above, every unit has the same difference, that is 1, whether it is between 2 or 3 or between 3 or 4. Okay, so they have the same level of interval between every unit. See, here I have put a picture so we can understand it better. So suppose I want to quantify the number of hours I slept yesterday. So I can put a number on it, like, oh, I slept for 5 hours, or I slept for 6 hours, like that. And I can compare my yesterday's sleep interval to my today's sleep interval, which might vary. And then I might say, oh, yes, today I got to sleep 2 hours lesser than I slept yesterday. So interval scale is used for variables involving quantity, which can be categorized, ranked, as well as expressed in increment with known, measurable, consistent, and equal intervals. Okay. So the type of variable here includes time, temperature, percentage of marks scored, etc. So using the interval scale, I can compare the marks between two students. I can compare the difference of marks between the students, and the variables that have familiar, constant, and computable differences are classified using the interval scale. So these scales are effective as they give us options for statistical analysis of provided data. Mean, median, or mode can be used to calculate the central tendency here. So in these type of scales, we can apply the central tendencies, which are the mean, median, and mode, and then we can infer from the data, we can infer relevant information from the data. So any questions so far?
No. Yet till now.
Okay. Then we move on to the last scale, which is the ratio scale. So the ratio scale is one of the most superior measurement techniques in the amongst all the scales that we have discussed so far. So similar to an interval scale, a ratio scale is an abstract number system. It allows measurement at proper interval, order, categorization, and distance with an added property, which is originating from a fixed 0 point. Okay, so in the previous three scales that we discussed, we cannot put the number 0 on it. Okay, so suppose I am I'm talking about like where we have factors like temperature or marks, etc. Generally, zero is not applicable. When zero is applicable, we cannot say that, oh, it's an interval scale. We have to measure it in terms of the ratio. So, ratio scales allows measurement at proper interval, order, categorization, distance, etc. And uh, this is one of the qualities that makes it like different from the other scales that we discussed, that the number zero can be added. So these are the characteristics of ratio scale. This is one of the most informative scales. It allows for all forms of statistical analysis, since it involves it has the property of originating from a fixed 0 point, and it has no negative numbers. So these are its qualities. So here we have a comparison table of all the four scales. So if we see the characteristic, so nominal scale is descriptive in nature. Ordinal scale has order, interval has fixed intervals, which we can also say distance, and ratio scale has all four of them. It has description, order, distance, and origin. Then when we talk about sequential arrangement, in nominal scale it is not applicable, since it's a named, it involves naming of variables. In ordinal scale it is applicable, and in interval and ratio scale also the sequencing or the categorization or putting it in a hierarchy is applicable. Now fixed 0 point is only applicable in the ratio scale. The other three scale does not start from zero. Multiplication and division are only applicable in the ratio scale, and addition and subtraction are also only applicable in ratio scale. So here we'll also brief. So another point. So just a minute. Yeah. So in the ratio scale, that is the only scale that can be categorized, ranked in equal intervals and continuity of value. Whereas interval scale can be categorized, ranked, and put into equal intervals. In ordinal scale, it can be only categorized and ranked, and nominal scale can only be categorized. Okay. So these are like the important characteristics of all the four tables. Sometimes we tend to get confused between the names, but like we have to like remember that say I say nominal, so we have to associate nominal with naming. We have, suppose if I say ordinal, so I have to remember ordinal, oh, it must be talking about a certain order. So that's how we connect words and we remember the meaning that is associated with them. So here I'll talk about the other scaling techniques in very brief. So scaling of subject, as I said, can be used for a comparative study between more than one object, like for products, services, brands, events, etc. Or they can be individually carried out to understand the consumer's behavior and response towards a particular object. So in other scaling techniques, we have the two categories under which other scaling techniques are placed based on their comparability. So we have the comparative scale, we have the non-comparative scale. So in comparative scale, we have paired comparison, rank, order, constant sum, and Q-sort scaling. And then we have non-comparative scale. So there are two types: continuous rating scale and itemized rating scale. So you must be knowing that itemized rating scale like Likert or semantic differential or staple, these are the itemized ranking scale. So we'll come to each of them one by one. So in paired comparison, a paired comparison symbolizes two variables from which the respondent need to select one. This technique is mainly used at the time of product testing to facilitate the consumer within comparative analysis of two major products in the market. So, for example, uh, we have to compare two products, P and Q, and then we compared it with the product R. So one can first compare P and Q, and then the superior one, like the product that has a superior percentage with R. For example, a market research was conducted to find out the consumers' preference for network service brand A and B, and the outcome of the survey was as follows: that A was preferred by 57% of the people, and B was preferred by 43% of the people. Thus, it is visible that consumers prefer brand A over brand B. Okay, so this is the paired comparison test where we compare two products and we find out which is more preferable or which is the superior one. Then we have the rank order. Okay, so in the rank order scaling, the respondents need to rank or arrange the given object according to his or her preference. So suppose I give you like 4 or 5 brands of soaps. Now I ask you like which is your favorite brand. Like you arrange it in a descending order, like the one that you like the most to the one that you like the least. And similarly, I collect the same data from like 10 people, and then based on their ratings I make a final rating or an average rating, and I decide that, oh, this brand is preferred by these number of people, then brand 2 is preferred by these number of people. So that will give us a idea, like which is like a more preferred brand amongst the general public, and that is mostly used in like market type of research. It's very easy where there's always a constant there are competitors in the market and you want to see like, oh, how your brand is performing or what is like the general public perception regarding a certain brand. So we use the rank order comparative scale. Then the third one is the constant sum. So it is a scaling technique where a continual sum of units like dollars or points or chips, etc., is given to the feature, attributes, and importance of a particular product or service. So, for example, the respondents belonging to 3 different segments were asked to allocate 50 points to the following attributes of cosmetics. So, excuse me. Yeah, so suppose I tell you you have 50 points and now you have to divide that into the following attributes, like so for example there's a cosmetic brand, okay, and now I tell you like you have to give points based on the attributes like packaging or the price or the fragrance of the product or how you find the texture of a certain product. So based on that you divide your 50 points amongst these different segments, and based on that, so we add up all the points and we see what brand is performing how. So like suppose I have a product A and I ask you to rate it on I give you 50 points and I'm like, rate these 5 criteria like fragrance, packaging, price, the texture, and the skin friendliness of the product. And suppose you give the texture like 20 marks, and then the packaging 10 marks, and then the price 10, and then you score very less on the fragrance. So I have to understand from this data that maybe my product is smelling bad, maybe it has a very bad or an irritating smell. So that is one attribute of my product that I need to work on. So that kind of information can be inferred from this type of data. Then we have the Q-sort scaling, which is a technique used for sorting the most appropriate objects out of a large number of given variables. So it emphasizes on the ranking of the given object in a descending order to form similar piles based on specific attributes. So it is mostly suitable in case where the number of objects is not less than 60 and more than 120. So the most appropriate range would be 60 to 90. So I'll give you an example. So the suppose in marketing of garments, the manufacturing company sorts the most efficient marketing executive based on their past performance, their sales, their revenue generation, etc. And the Q sort scaling was performed on suppose 60 executives, and the marketing heads create 3 piles based on their efficiency as high efficiency, modern efficiency, moderate efficiency, and low efficiency. So in this case, the initials of the employees can be used to denote their names. So and then based on that, we can find out like which employee has uh, high efficiency or moderate or low. So this type of scaling is mostly used for that. You can say it is a sort of comparison. Then we come to the non-comparative scale, when we are not comparing products, or we are not comparing the data amongst each other, but we are trying to like maybe arrange or categorize it in a different way. So we have the non-comparative scale, which is used to analyze the performance of an individual product or object or on different parameters. Like the parameter here is not comparison. So for example, we have the continuous rating scale. So it is a graphical rating scale where the respondents are free to place an object at a position of their choice. So it is done by selecting and marking a point along the vertical or horizontal line, which ranges between two to an extreme criteria. For example, I'll give you the example of another product. So a mattress manufacturing company can use the continuous rating scale to find out the level of customer satisfaction for its new comfy bedding. So these responses can be taken in the following way, that like highly dissatisfied, quite dissatisfied, dissatisfied, satisfied, quite satisfied, and highly satisfied. So that would be a continuous rating scale, but it is also non-comparative. Like I'm not trying to compare the performance of a mattress in comparison to another mattress. I'm just trying to measure the customer satisfaction with a particular product that I'm selling. So based on this information that we also discussed in the ordinal scale, where we are also where we were using this technique, where we were putting things in order. There we discussed it that we can infer different sort of non-comparative data from this kind of scaling. Then we have the itemized ranking scale, which is another essential technique under the non-comparative scale. It emphasizes on choosing a particular category among the various given categories of the respondent. So each is briefly defined by the researcher to facilitate such selection. So the three commonly used item rating scales, one is the Likert scale. Okay, you all must be familiar with the Likert scale, where the researcher provide some statements and ask the respondent to mark their level of agreement or disagreement. So, for example, we have 1 is equal to strongly agree, 2 is equal to disagree, 3 neither agree nor disagree, so on and so forth. So this is the type of scaling that we use. Then we have the semantic differential scale, which is a bipolar 7-point non-comparative rating scale, in which the respondent can mark on any of the 7 points for each given attribute of the object as per their personal choice, thus depicting the respondent's attitude or perception towards the object. So, for example, suppose we have a brand of watches this time. So, the semantic differential scaling can be carried out to understand the customer's attitude towards this product, like the style, the affordability, the quality. So it can be from stylish to unfashionable. So we can have a scale from +3 to -3. So here, last time I was discussing the polygraph example. So in polygraph, we have a scaling technique, which is like a measurement technique called the Utah scaling. So there we have ranking from +6 to -6. So the different parameters like the breathing or the heart rate or sweating is measured on a +6 to -6 scale, which is an example of the semantic differential scale. So I'll give you an example briefly. So what we do is, suppose I am the subject in a polygraph examination, and I should deceptive patterns, like I'm breathing, I'm nervous, I'm constantly sweating, and I'm also trying to deceive the system. So I'll receive a positive scale that I'm being deceptive. So I might receive a scale like a score like a +2 or a +3. But at the same time, if after hearing a question, I My sweating might be like in negative as well. Like I'm trying to maintain my composure, I'm trying to like not give away, and I'm trying to like control my breathing and all of that. So my score might go in minus. So this is like one of the examples from the forensic psychology field where this type of scaling and measurement is used. So this involves like a positive, from a positive score to 0 to a negative score. Okay, it's like a continuum. And lastly, we have the staple scale. So staple scale is that it is an itemized ranking scale which measures the response, perception, or attitude of the respondents for a particular object through a unipolar rating. So the range of a staple scale is between -5 to +5, eliminating 0, thus confining it to 10 units. So as I said, in the semantic differential scale, we have from positive to negative, but it involves 0 as well. But here in the staple scale, it doesn't involve the number 0. So for example, there's a company which like sponsor tours and travel, and they ask the respondent to rank their holiday package in terms of value for money, and for example how user friendly it is. So they can maybe rank it from +5 to -5, but they cannot say 0, like I had 0 experience. That is not possible. You either have like a very good positive experience or a very bad negative experience, but it cannot be like I had 0 experience with that package. So in this type of scaling, the ranking like or the number 0 cannot be given to any product. So to conclude this segment, scaling techniques provide us with a very clear picture of the product's life cycle and the market acceptability of the product that is offered, and it facilitates the development and benchmarking through the type of market research. So this was all about the scaling techniques. Is it clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you guys have any questions before I move on to the next topic?
I don't have any question. Then we go to the next topic. If Ashmita has, so she can ask.
Okay, so I'm not able to see the screen at all. So if you guys have a question, you guys have to speak up, unmute yourself and speak up. If not, I can move on to the next topic.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next topic that we'll cover today is questionnaires and inventories. It's a very small topic. I'll explain it briefly with examples.
Saptapurni. Hello,
Yes, sir.
Saptapurni. I am adding only one point.
Yes,
That
sir,
is
sure.
the rating scale we are using to understand the level. Okay.
Okay, sir.
For example, level of job satisfaction, level of consumer satisfaction. Okay. So level is important. Level, that is the level of depression. But we are using the ranking scale for the positional difference. Okay. That is what is the position of the particular object, whether it is first preference or second preference or third preference. So there is a difference between the ranking and the rating. That is the number one. And number two, we can assess the variance in case of the rating scale, but we cannot assess the variance of the ranking scale, because the ranking scale indicates the position. Therefore, we can apply only the quartile in case of the rank order scale. But in case of the rating scale, we can apply the standard deviation, variance, etc. Okay.
Okay,
Is
sir,
it
thank
clear
you.
to all of you? File clear? Ushmita? Okay, now you continue.
Okay, so now I'll start with the second topic, which is questionnaires and inventories. So, so I'll first define what is a questionnaire and what is an inventory. So a questionnaire in research is an instrument which consists of a series of questions for the purpose of gathering information from the respondents. Now, questionnaires can be thought of as a kind of written interview. They can be carried out face to face, over the phone, or by post, where you can just just hand out the questionnaire to the respondents and they fill it. So that is a form of data collection. Questionnaires which involves like descriptive answers can be used in qualitative studies as well. Like they are mostly used in qualitative studies where you have like a questionnaire and you seek to answer those questions. You give your participants a list of those questions and they fill it out and they give it to you. And in mixed method studies also, which involves like a mix of quantitative and qualitative methods, questionnaires are used. So a questionnaire provides a very relatively cheap, quick, and efficient way of obtaining large amount of information from a large sample size of people. Now, data can be collected relatively quickly because the researcher would not need to be present when questions are being completed. This is a very useful technique for large population when interviews would be impractical. So suppose I want to interview like 100 people. So now I cannot go up to them and ask them like, oh, you like ask them a list of maybe 50 questions. Okay. So I have to hand them this questionnaire and they'll fill it out. So I'll tell you. So when I was doing my dissertation, which I finished recently, I have used this techniques of questionnaires where we designed the questionnaires for lawyers and police officers, and they were asked about their opinion and on other factors relating to female criminality. And it was a purely qualitative study on female criminality, the genesis of their feelings of guilt and restorative justice. So the police officers and lawyers, it wasn't like my sample size was too big or anything. My sample size was 25, which is uh, relatively a small sample size. But since it was a qualitative study and we wanted to do like detailed answers, we wanted like very detailed and depth and insightful answers from them. So we had to give them time. And the questionnaires that was designed by me and my guides were a lengthy questionnaire because we were not trying to just measure one variable but different variables regarding female criminality, like their genesis or their feelings of guilt, or is there a dispartial treatment between males and female criminals in the criminal justice system. It was a study on the female criminality, plus it was also a comparative study, so it involved different factors. So what I did was, and also the police officers and the advocates who were my subjects were also people who were very busy. So I cannot just take like 2-3 hours of their time and spill out my surveys. That would be very selfish of me. So what I had to do was like I did talk to them face to face. I did break the ice with them. I did try to build a rapport, which is very important in a qualitative research. And I had to like take their consent because it involved taking out information from them which can be confidential in nature. And sometimes people who are in those professions like police officer, advocates, would not want to give out a bad image of of the type of jobs that they are in. So suppose I ask them a question like, so is there a differential treatment between men and women in the criminal justice system? They won't outrightly say yes, of course there is a difference, like men are treated much more badly than women are treated. So that becomes sort of a controversial question, and sometimes they even get confused that, oh no, now what to say. Like they cannot just blatantly say no, but they cannot outrightly say yes as well. So like that becomes a tussle for them as well, which as a researcher we have to understand. So first thing was that when they are filling out a questionnaire, it's important that you do not collect any of the personal information that would give out their identity, like their names or their email IDs or something like that. All these information are confidential, and also consent is very important. So, and the consent has to be informed consent. Like, for example, sometimes the police officers, they did not have an idea when I'm talking about restorative justice, because that is a concept that is not existing in India. That does not form part of our criminal justice system. We have things like plea bargaining, we have arbitration, mediation, conciliation, and then we have the nyay panchayats and all of that. So those terms they're familiar with. But if I throw a term at them like restorative justice, which they might not have any idea about, and they did not know what to tell me, so I, as a researcher, it was my job to brief them that, see, this is what the topic means, and this is what I'm trying to ask you. So now you give me information like that. And in questionnaires, they also had the choice to, not answer a certain question. So sometimes you do not feel comfortable in answering every question. Like there might be 50 questions in a questionnaire, and you might feel that, oh, these 2 3 questions I don't know enough about, or these might be like a very tricky question, so like I have to play it safe and not answer it all. So which is completely fine, which is acceptable. That in that case, those answers to those questions becomes missing data in qualitative study. So like we have to take everything into consideration when we're analyzing those questionnaires. Okay, so now again coming back to the topic. um in questionnaire, however, there's a problem with questionnaires, that is the respondents may lie due to social desirability. So which is like a very important factor that has to be considered, because even though like uh, the identity of the respondent is confidential and everything, but most people, they want to present a positive image of themselves, so they lie or they bend the truth to make it look good. So for example, as I just said, so I'm asked a police officer regarding the criminal justice system or something regarding their department. So they would not want to give me like a bad impression of the department or anything, because they feel that is their social obligation. Or sometimes they would, sometimes they would not know the meaning of a term, but they are too shy to accept it, right? So they'll be like trying to give me an answer which is based on their understanding of the term, which might not be what the term actually is. So that becomes a problem sometimes. Social desirability in qualitative research and mainly in filling out these questionnaires are very common. So sometimes a questionnaire can use both open-ended and closed-ended questions to collect data. And
Excuse me, ma'am. Are you
yes, yes,
showing some slides? Because there is only one slide open, that is questionnaire.
yes.
And
Can you see the next slide now?
yes, ma'am. Now.
Okay, okay. No, I was not showing the slide, but I was
Okay.
just discussing, yeah, in general. So
Okay.
now you can see the slide, right? Okay. So yeah, so in questionnaires, we have like closed questionnaires and then we have open questionnaires. So in closed questions, they are structured in a way that only allows the respondent to see or answer in a pre-decided category. So for example, yes, no question, or I ask what is your gender. So you can say male or female or others, etc. So these are options which are pre-decided for you, and you cannot, give me like open-ended or subjective answers. It has to be objective. And or also you can have like a complex list of alternatives to choose from. So like suppose I ask you which is your favorite type of snack, and I give you like 10 options, so you only can choose from those 10 options. Okay, so that is the nature of close-ended questions. So these can be very economical, and the respondents provide information which can be easily converted into quantitative data as well, like yes no answers. In contrast to that, we have open-ended questions which are very subjective in nature, where I ask you your opinion regarding a certain phenomena or your experience. So I ask you, how was your experience during the whole COVID lockdown situation? So you won't give me like a single word answer, or you won't say good or bad. You might say like my experience was awful, but then as a researcher, as a qualitative researcher, I'm obliged to ask you how awful. Like, can you describe or can you give out details? So then you will explain it to me. Like you'll talk about like different experiences that you have had. Maybe a family member was sick, maybe you were sick, maybe your mental health was not great. So all of that factors. So it becomes like it becomes like a very general question, but I might get like a lot of themes from your answers. Okay, so that is where the thematic analysis in the qualitative data can be conducted, which is also what I did with my research. I got like 5 to 6 themes based on the answers of the advocates and the police officers, and then those themes were coded, and then sub themes were made out of those themes, and it's a whole process. So anyways, I was saying that open-ended question gives you a lot of freedom to, tell the researcher how you are feeling, because in quantitative data, what happens, your satisfaction or your feeling or your opinion about a certain things get categorized, or you can only give out certain kind of, like, you can either rank something, you can, either say, oh, I'm very satisfied with this product, or I'm not satisfied at all. So it just becomes very limited information. But in qualitative interviews or in qualitative data, the information that you give out is huge. Like, you can actually express yourself, and as a respondent also, you feel like, oh, I'm being heard. Like, it kind of works like a therapy, like where you talk to the researcher. And sometimes this happens also, like in qualitative research, suppose the researcher asks you something, and you start to give out so much information that it becomes like a one-sided therapy session where the research, because as a researcher you cannot interrupt the subject and say like, okay, only this much information is fine. You have to listen to the subject, and the subject can go on and on talking about their life, and one topic will lead to another, and sometimes you can, dive the topic can get diverted, and as a researcher you have to bring your subject back to, like, no, only stick to this part of the topic. You have to emphasize on that. So that is the thing with questionnaire. But with written questionnaire, like, you can, like, only you have only like limited space to fill those answers. So the so the respondent, sorry, cannot go on and on about how they feel about a particular topic. They have to, like, stick to the space or the time, like that. So that is there. Now, in when we come to designing a questionnaire, there are certain things that we have to keep in mind, like the aim, the length, the pilot study, or the terminologies that we use, and how we present those questions. So the aim is to make sure that all the questions asked are addressed to the aim of the research. However, we can use one feature of the construct that we are investigating per item. So whenever we are designing a questionnaire, the aim of our research, the objective of our research has to be kept in mind. Okay. So once I start making a research, making a questionnaire on a topic like juvenile delinquency, so there might be a lot of things that I would want to ask. Okay. I can include like 15, 20 factors. But then I have to, my research title has to remind me that what are the variables that I'm looking at. Okay. I can only ask a certain number of questions. I cannot, digress so much. So that is very important when designing a questionnaire. The length has to be kept in mind. See, like sometimes we understand that qualitative questionnaires can get a little lengthy, and the answers are going to be lengthy. The questions are going to be more in number, because you are trying to gather as much information as you can from a limited number of participants. So you might, just shoot them with a lot of questions, and they might also answer, but you have to keep in mind that you cannot just give a respondent 100 questions to answer. That is like impractical. And the other thing is that the respondent might not be interested to even fill that out. So when we were doing our dissertation, so a lot of our classmates would come to us with Google forms and with, questionnaires to, like, now you fill this, it has 70 questions, it has 80 questions, and we used to make faces that no, it's not possible, and no one wants to give out that much time to, fill out. But then it becomes boring, it becomes monotonous. So and the participants would not want to participate in the research at all if you give them like a very lengthy questionnaire. So you have to, like, try to crunch those questions, like make 2 questions into 1 question, like reduce the number of questions as much as you can. That is one of the skills of designing a questionnaire. And that is the strength of your questionnaire as well, that the questions are interesting. They are less in numbers, so the participants will be more prone to filling those out. Then pilot study is very important when we are doing this kind of qualitative survey. So pilot study is a small scale run or practice study to ensure people understand the question. So people will also be able to give detailed, honest feedback on the questionnaire design. So for when we design a questionnaire, what ideally should be done is a pilot study before we conduct the main study. So the pilot study would involve like having a participant as a sample participant to explain the question to them. You take their feedback at the end of it, which you don't do in a normal study. Like in pilot study, you run the study and then you take the participants' feedback as to how do you think the interview was, or how do you think the questions are designed. So based on the feedback, you can make changes in your questionnaire after the pilot study, which you cannot after once the main study has been done. So that is what pilot study is very important. Then the order of questions are very important. The question should progress logically from the least sensitive to the most sensitive. So from factual to behavioral question to the cognitive ones, and from general to specific. And the researcher should ensure that the answers to question is not influenced by the previous question. Okay, as I said, that is your skill of how you design a questionnaire. Now there are questionnaires that come pre-designed. Like suppose you obtain permission from a particular scholar to use their questionnaire. Now you see in those questionnaires how that particular scholar or researcher has framed the questions. It should follow an order. It should follow, like, it should be from theme to theme. You should not jumble themes up, and you cannot just divert their minds into, like, once you are asking them about COVID and the next question is okay, so do you like pancakes? So it cannot be like that. It has to flow logically. It has to have a certain sequence to it, that only then it will interest the respondents as well. And for data analysis also, that becomes like much more convenient if the topics are arranged sequentially, like that. And the terminology, the fifth point is the terminology. So the terminology should be very minimum, and you should try to avoid technical jargons. I understand sometimes it is not possible because, for example, I say a term like restorative justice. Now how else do I say it? Like, there is only one term for it. The most I can do is I can explain that term, but I cannot change it, or I cannot try to like replace it with another word. So that is not possible. But wherever it is possible, okay, like sometimes our subjects, they are not very well informed. Like, of course, if you take a survey with me regarding something which is related to technology, now I'm technologically very challenged. I'm a noob. So if you throw terms at me, like, big data and data science and all of that, I might have like zero idea what this person is talking about. Similarly, when we conduct research in psychology, there are terms that we as psychologists or criminologists we know, but our participants, they might not have any idea what that term means. So we have to like kind of underplay it here. We kind of have to like keep it to like a very basic we might have to use like very basic terminologies, so that the other person can also understand. Okay, later on when you are analyzing the data, when you are reporting, when you are writing your papers and all of that, you can use technical terms, that is fine. But when you are for designing that questionnaire, when you are interviewing a person, then those technical jargon should be avoided. And the last is the presentation. So your questionnaire, you should make it look like a professional questionnaire. It should include clear and concise instruction. If sent through post, make sure that the envelope does not matlab, like the envelope specifies that this is like a research questionnaire, and then you have like an instruction on how to fill it and what you're looking at. You brief them basically. Just don't put them in a situation where they have the questionnaire in their hand and they don't know what to do with it, like that. So this was all about questionnaires. Now we come to the inventory part, which I'm sure you guys must be more familiar with since you come from like a pure psychology background. So an inventory is a list of items which is often in a question form, and it is used in describing and studying behavior, interest, and attributes. So an inventory is like a catalog of the content of something. In psychology, we use this term broadly with the notion of measurement attached to it, that there can be a checklist or a questionnaire or a personality measurement. So there are different types of inventory. So for attitude measurement, we have the Minnesota teacher attitude inventory, which is the MTAI. Or we have for biographical inventories, we have the Barnett Leonard relationship inventory, BLRI. Then we have the clinical inventories like BDI, which is the Beck depression inventory, and then the psychological screening inventory, PSI, and then we have personality inventories like California psychological inventory, and then we have the Eisen personality inventory, and there are many of them. Okay, so an inventory is like a self-report, which is a type of psychological test which is often used in a personality assessment. Now, this type of test is often presented in a paper and a pencil format, or may even be administered on a computer. So, a typical self-report inventory presents a number of questions or statements that may or may not describe a certain quality or characteristic of the text subject, and the person has to choose from those given options. Now, that is like a basic difference between a questionnaire and an inventory. In a questionnaire, you are not given choices. Okay. Like you might design a questionnaire with choices, but an inventory comes with a pre-decided set of choices that you have to choose from. So, for example, we take the BDI or the Eisen personality inventory, or the 16 PF. In all those all those are examples of inventories where you assess, like for example, we take the 16 PF, which is designed by Raymond Cartel to assess the individual based on his like which is based on the trait theory of personality. And this test was used to generate personality profile of the individual, and is often used to evaluate employees and to help them select a career, like in career counseling and all of that. So that comes with a pre-decided set of questions, and you have to choose, and based on the options that you choose. Now, that is also very subjective what every person is going to choose. Subjectivity in inventories and questionnaires is like one common thing, but in inventories it becomes like very specific. Okay, it has a direction. It is the subjectivity is less there. So for example, I like you, what type of cuisine do you like, and I give you like two three options like Indian, Chinese, continental, and others. So in others you can specify, but then like suppose I don't give you that option and I say what type of cuisine do you like, Indian, Chinese, or continental. Now you might not like any of them, but you are left with no choice. So you might say, like out of the three, you like Indian the most. So you choose that option. So in inventory, the options are limited, but you can only choose from a set of options that you have. And all the famous, inventories like the MMPI or the BDI or the IZENC or the 16PF, they're all examples of inventory. So that is the basic difference between a questionnaire and an inventory. You cannot just design an inventory like that. Okay, it has to follow a certain criteria. It has to follow like maybe the APA guidelines or something. It has to be approved by a certain authority. But in case of questionnaire, as a researcher, you have like much more freedom to do your own thing, to design it how you want. And that is the beauty of qualitative research. It gives you a lot of freedom as a researcher. You can either choose an inventory which is already pre-made, or you can make your own questionnaire which suits your target, which suits your type of research. So when I was doing that, my research on forensic psychology, like which was mostly a criminological research on female criminality, or when my classmates were doing research on juvenile delinquency. Now these are the topics where we do not necessarily have a scale that is mostly used. So suppose I'm working on something like depression. So there are many inventories on depression that I can use, and I can use that to measure depression in like students, or based on whatever my topic is. But when I'm doing a topic like juvenile delinquency and female criminality, there are no inventories or pre-decided questionnaires out there. So that is a challenge that you face. And what do you do to overcome that challenge? You design your own questionnaire. Okay, or you might find an inventory which might be, like somewhat relating to your topic, not exactly maybe, and then use that. And also, do a pure qualitative study and and later on mix the two and make it into a mixed method study. So that is the basic difference between an inventory and uh, a questionnaire. And sometimes we have these self report inventories, which are also good solution when the researcher needs to administer a large number of tests in a relatively small time. So many self-reported inventories can be completed very quickly, and it might take like very less time as compared to questionnaire, like in 15 minutes. Like in BDI and ICE, these are self or Hamilton anxiety scale. These are, self-reporting inventories where you fill it out yourself. You can calculate the score. The scale is already given. You can calculate your score very well, and then you can understand. So it is kind of self-diagnosing, which is not recommended when you are dealing with serious mental health problems like depression and anxiety. But then at least, like, for for understanding purpose and for basic assessment, for self assessment, they are very good. But like in BDI and in Hamilton or Isaac, the questions are very less. So the BDI one, which is like the first questionnaire that was made, the questions were very less. Okay, so there were like lesser than 20 questions on depression and the mental health of the person. So just based on 20 questions, to diagnose whether a person has depression it is very difficult. So like that is not recommended at all. But when we just for fun, we like try to take this personality test like 16 PFO, I am an INFJ or ENFP, like that. So all of that, uh, or the the Eisen personality, like, oh, how introverted I am, how extroverted I am, whether I'm stable or whether I'm neurotic. And based on that you get a personality like sanguine, or I'm forgetting the names, but yeah, there are mainly four personality types. So choleric, sanguine, and all of that. So but based on that, we can self-diagnose. We can find out our personality type. We can uh, like kind of get an insight into our own personalities, our own mental health. So that is like the applicability, or that is the application of an inventory. So this is what I had for today's class. I hope every topic is cleared. If not, then you can now ask me questions.
Until now, it's clear.
Okay, so both the topics are clear, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So no questions from your side, right?
Yes, ma'am. No questions.
Okay, so before I wrap it up, I want to give like a few instructions regarding your examination. Now I don't know if Sonam ma'am and Shweta ma'am has already discussed it with you, but like for your viva, there are certain topics that you need to prepare very well. Okay, and these are like like you can say that these are expected questions, so kindly make a note of it. So see, we are doing a course on forensic psychology, and this institution, which is the Ravindra Psychotherapy Research Institute Trust, so the examiner, the external, might ask you to relate the two. Okay, how do you relate forensic psychology to Ravindric psychotherapy? Okay, this is like a very common question. It is asked again and again. So like kind of like from your own insight, from whatever you have studied so far, you try to link the two, or you try to like have an answer prepared for that. And since it is also a research based trust, so when I'm talking about uh, like research methodology, so these are the technical parts of it, but you'll apply it somewhere, right? So you might have written a research paper employing these techniques, the scaling techniques. It can be quantitative, qualitative, or a mixed method research and all of that. So you need to have like whatever you have done as part of this course prepared to be presented in front of the Viva board when they ask you. Okay. So these are some of the topics that I'm telling you that are very important from the Viva and the examination point of view. So kindly make a note of it and kindly have an answer prepared before the exam. Now the dates of exam, I don't know. I have not been told regarding the dates. I confirm with Anupama ma'am, and I'll let you know, of course. But please start, preparing for the exams. It will be in this month only, in August only. So please, start preparing for the exam. And if you have any doubt, since Ashma ma'am is not here, I'll be taking her, like I've taken over her classes and the parts that she was supposed to teach. So you can reach out to me anytime if you have any doubts, if you want notes or anything. Please kindly put it on the group, or you can DM me personally. Anything is fine. And yeah, that is all I had to say. Sir, আপনি কিছু বলবেন? Sir?
Thank you, Saptaparni.
Okay, sir.
You have covered nicely these checklist questionnaire issues. These are very important tools in forensic psychology. They have learned the TAT Rorschach also, maybe. I'm not sure. Rorschach, whether you have understood, whether this thing is discussed, I'm not sure.
Sir, Rorschach
Pushpita and
was not
Payal?
discussed.
The Rorschach not discussed, only the TAT.
Only
Okay.
TAT.
Okay. So today you have learned the questionnaire and the checklist issue. Now you try to relate. Okay. Now you have understood what is questionnaire, importance of the questionnaire, etc. But the most important part maybe in the Viva or in the examination, that is how do you relate this questionnaire issue in the forensic psychology, investigation, anything. Okay. Because the forensic psychology has different branches. So how questionnaire can be used there? You can think about it. Questionnaire, information schedule, these are very important issue. Another important issue that Saptaparni has mentioned, two things are very important in Ravindra Psychotherapy Research Institute Trust. One is how you can relate Ravindra psychotherapy postulates in the forensic psychology. That is the number one. And the second one is the research methodology, okay, and basic statistics. So these issues are very important in case of the Viva or any examination. Okay. Okay, Saptaparni.
Okay, sir.
So you please prepare the student with these
Okay, sir.
three issues so that they can qualify. Okay.
Sir, sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
So please close your hands for the prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadayo Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.